welcome back to Prime Wealth. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, welcome. It's great to be here with you all.
So today we're diving into a topic that's been buzzing around lately. Side hustles, right?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of folks are picking up side gigs these days, but not everyone knows what that means for their taxes.
Exactly. It can feel a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, we're here to break it down for you.
Right. And we'll chat about things like how to report your side hustle income and the deductions you might not even know about.
Yeah, plus we'll cover some common mistakes people make when it comes to taxes on their side hustles.
That's a big one. You really don't want to end up with a surprise at tax time.
For sure. And we'll give you some tips on how to keep things organized throughout the year.
Organization is key, for sure. It can save you a lot of headaches down the line.
So if you've been thinking about starting a side hustle, or if you already have one, stick around. You won't want to miss this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, let's kick things off. So first up, what exactly qualifies as a side hustle? So Alex, let's dive into why side hustle taxes are such a big deal right now, especially for folks over 40.
Yeah, absolutely, Jordan. You know, a lot of people in that age group are really looking for ways to supplement their income, right? Maybe they're facing retirement on the horizon, or just wanting to boost their savings a bit.
Right, and I think it's interesting how many people are turning to side hustles these days. I mean, I was reading somewhere that about 40% of people over 40 have a side gig. That's a significant number.
It really is. And it's not just about making extra cash. It's also about pursuing passions, staying engaged, or even just keeping up with the rising cost of living. I mean, inflation has really taken a toll lately.
Totally. And I think that emotional aspect is often overlooked. You know, it's not just about the money. It's about feeling productive and valued, especially if someone's been in a job for a long time or, like, if they've recently transitioned to retirement.
Exactly. And when you add in the tax implications, it becomes even more crucial. Many people don't realize that income from side hustles is still taxable, just like any other income.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of folks can get caught off guard. I mean, let's say someone starts a small online business selling handmade crafts or consulting on the side. They might not think about how that impacts their tax situation.
Right, and then they get to tax season, and boom, they're hit with a surprise tax bill. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you're already juggling a full-time job and a side hustle.
Oh, for sure. And then there's the added stress of figuring out deductions and what you can actually claim. It's a lot to navigate when you're not familiar with it all.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. Many people think, oh, I'm just making a little extra money, and they don't realize that the IRS wants their cut too. It's important to be proactive about understanding those responsibilities.
I mean, think about the stories we hear, right? Like, you have someone who's been working a steady job for years, and then they start this passion project. They're excited, but then they're hit with these unexpected tax consequences.
Exactly. And the emotional impact can be huge. It can lead to feelings of anxiety or even regret, you know? They might think, why didn't I plan better? But it doesn't have to be that way.
Right, and I think that's the key takeaway here. If people can get ahead of this, they can really enjoy their side hustles without that looming tax cloud hanging over them.
Well said, Jordan. And, you know, in recent years, we've seen a rise in gig economy jobs, too. More people are turning to apps and platforms to make money on the side. It's become like a lifestyle for some.
Yes, and with that comes the need to understand taxes better. I mean, if you're driving for a rideshare company or doing freelance work, you're technically considered self-employed, right?
Absolutely. And that comes with its own set of rules. Self-employed individuals have to pay self-employment tax, which can be a shocker if you're not prepared.
Right. And honestly, it's just not something they teach you in school. So for someone over 40 who's maybe been in traditional jobs for years, this can feel like a whole new world.
Exactly. And it's easy to feel lost in that. But it's important to remember that there's a community out there and resources available.
Yeah, and with the right knowledge, you can turn what feels like a burden into an opportunity. I mean, I've heard stories of people who turn their side hustles into full-time gigs just because they were informed and prepared.
That's the beauty of it. And something I love about this topic. It's not just about taxes. It's about empowering people to take control of their financial future.
Definitely. And for many, side hustles can be a pathway to retirement savings, especially if they're putting that extra income towards an IRA or something similar.
Right, and that's a smart move. It's a chance to diversify income streams and build wealth, but it all comes back to understanding those tax implications.
So it's really important for our listeners to be aware of this, especially if they're in this life stage. They have the potential to make significant changes in their financial landscape.
Absolutely, and that's why we're here, right? To help them navigate these waters.
Exactly. So let's transition now into some core strategies, because I think our listeners are going to want to know how to manage this effectively. So Alex, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of side hustle taxes. I mean, a lot of people are starting these gigs, right?
Absolutely, Jordan. The rise of side hustles has been incredible. But, with that comes the responsibility of understanding taxes.
Right? It's like the fun part can quickly turn into a headache if you're not careful. So where do we start?
Well, the first step is really understanding that income you earn from a side hustle is taxable, just like your regular job. So you need to keep track of all that income.
Yeah, and I've heard people say, oh, it's just a little extra cash, but it adds up, doesn't it?
Exactly. A little here and there can become significant. So one practical tip is to set up a separate bank account for your side hustle. This way, you can easily track all your income and expenses.
Oh, that's smart. So you're saying, don't mix it with your personal finances?
Exactly. Mixing those can create confusion come tax time. And speaking of expenses, it's crucial to track those too, because they can reduce your taxable income.
Right. So what kind of expenses are we talking about?
Well, it can vary depending on your hustle. But common ones include things like supplies, marketing costs, or even a portion of your home office if you're working from home.
Ah, got it. So if I'm, say, a freelance graphic designer, I could write off my software subscriptions, right?
Yes, exactly. Just keep receipts or, use an app to track those expenses. It makes life easier when tax season rolls around.
That's a great tip. And I guess it's also important to know about estimated taxes, right?
Yes, that's a big one. If you expect to owe more than a certain amount at the end of the year, the IRS wants you to pay estimated taxes quarterly. This helps avoid penalties.
So how do you figure out what you owe?
A good rule of thumb is to set aside about 25 to 30% of your side hustle income for taxes. That way, you're not caught off guard.
Wow, that's a chunk. But it makes sense. Better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. And, you can use tax software or even consult a tax professional to help calculate that, especially if your side hustle income is growing.
That's a good point. So tools like tax software can really simplify things for people.
Definitely. And some software even helps track your expenses as you go, which is a huge bonus.
Okay, so we've got tracking income and expenses, and we've touched on estimated taxes. What's next?
Well, if your side hustle grows large enough, you might need to consider the type of business structure you want, like a sole proprietorship, LLC, or even a corporation.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a big decision. How do you know what's best?
It often depends on your income level and liability concerns. But starting as a sole proprietor is usually simple. Just know that with that comes personal liability, so be mindful.
And that's where, an LLC might come in, right?
Exactly. An LLC can protect your personal assets if something goes wrong, but it does come with additional paperwork and costs.
Right. So it's about weighing the pros and cons. And, when you're just starting out, keeping it simple might be the way to go.
Yes, simplicity can be key. And remember, if you're unsure, consulting with a tax advisor can provide clarity. They can help you navigate those choices.
Great advice. Now, what about record keeping? I mean, how long should people keep their records?
Generally, it's good to keep your records for at least 3 years. That's how far back the IRS can audit you. But if you're dealing with something more complex, you might want to keep them longer.
So, a good habit is just to get into the routine of organizing everything from the start.
Exactly. Set aside a little time each week or month to review your finances. It can save you a lot of stress later on.
I love that. So, habits can really make a difference. And what about those who might be tempted to not report all their income? For the sake of avoiding taxes.
That's a slippery slope. It's really not worth it. The penalties for not reporting income can be severe. Plus, you could be missing out on benefits, like retirement contributions.
Right. And we all want to build that wealth for the future.
Exactly. So maintaining integrity in reporting is crucial. Stick to the numbers, and you'll sleep better at night.
Yeah, for sure. So to recap, tracking your income, understanding your expenses, and staying on top of estimated taxes, those are key strategies.
Definitely, and don't forget about considering your business structure as you grow and keeping good records.
Sounds like a solid plan, but I guess before we wrap up, what are some common pitfalls to watch out for?
Oh, there are a few. Let's touch on those next.
So Alex, we've talked a lot about side hustles and how great they can be for boosting income, but let's dive into the not so fun part, the taxes.
Yeah, definitely, Jordan. It's one of those things that can catch people off guard. They're all excited about making extra money, but then, bam, taxes come into play.
Right? So what are some common pitfalls you see people falling into when it comes to side hustle taxes?
Well, one big mistake is not keeping track of income and expenses properly. I've seen folks just assume they'll remember everything, but, life gets busy.
Totally. I mean, who has time to remember every little receipt, right?
Exactly. And then tax time rolls around, and they're scrambling. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Ugh, I can only imagine. So what happens if they don't track things well?
Well, it can lead to underreporting income, which is a big red flag for the IRS. They don't like surprises.
Oh, for sure. So what's a good strategy for keeping track of everything?
The simplest way is to use a spreadsheet or even an app designed for tracking expenses. Just set aside some time each week to update it.
That makes sense. And I suppose taking photos of receipts helps too, right?
Absolutely. Just snap a pic with your phone, and there you go. It's all digital and organized.
Okay, so keeping records is key. What about expenses? What do people commonly mess up there?
Well, a common mistake is thinking they can deduct everything. They might believe that if they bought a coffee while working on their side hustle, it's a write-off.
Right, but that's not how it works, is it?
No, it's not. The IRS wants to see that the expense was necessary and directly related to the business. So, personal expenses aren't deductible.
Got it. So do you have any real-life examples of someone who ran into trouble with this?
Sure. I had a client once who sold handmade jewelry on the side. She thought she could deduct her entire trip to a craft fair, including hotel and food expenses.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she learned the hard way that only the costs directly related to selling at that fair could be deducted, like booth fees, supplies used, and maybe transportation if it was necessary.
So she essentially paid taxes on expenses she thought she could write off?
Exactly. And, it ended up costing her quite a bit more than she anticipated.
Wow, that's tough. So what's the best way to avoid that kind of situation?
Well, I always tell people to be specific about their deductions. Keep a list of what's necessary for their side hustle. And, when in doubt, consult a tax professional.
That's great advice. Speaking of professionals, do you think people often underestimate the importance of consulting one?
Oh, for sure. Many believe they can just do it themselves. But tax laws can be really complex, especially with side hustles.
Yeah, I can see how that would be overwhelming.
Right? Another pitfall is waiting until the last minute to file. It can lead to mistakes or missed deductions.
So it's better to, plan ahead?
Definitely. If you set aside time throughout the year to prepare, you'll feel way more in control when tax season hits.
And what about estimated taxes? Do people know they need to pay those if they're making money on the side?
Not always, unfortunately. Many don't realize that if they earn more than $1,000 in a year from self-employment, they might need to pay estimated taxes quarterly.
Oh, wow. That's a surprise for some, I bet.
Yeah, and then they get hit with a big tax bill come April, which can be pretty stressful.
So how can they figure out how much to set aside for taxes?
A good rule of thumb is to set aside about 25 to 30% of your side hustle income. That way, you're covered when tax time arrives.
That's a smart strategy. And it's all about planning, right?
Exactly. And if you find you're overpaying, you can always adjust your estimated payments for the next quarter.
That's really helpful. So let's talk about another mistake. I think some people might forget about local taxes or permits required for their side hustle.
Yes, that's a big one. Many folks only think about federal and state taxes, but local regulations can sneak up on you.
So what's your advice on that?
Do your research. Make sure you understand what's required in your area. And, don't skip any necessary permits or licenses.
And that can save a lot of headaches later, right?
Absolutely. It's all about being proactive.
Okay, so to wrap up, if someone finds themselves in a tight spot with their side hustle taxes, what's the first step they should take?
Well, first, don't panic. Take a deep breath and assess the situation. Figure out what went wrong and gather your documents.
That sounds manageable.
Then I'd recommend reaching out to a tax professional who can help you navigate the next steps and possibly help amend any mistakes.
Great advice, Alex. So just to recap, keeping track of income, understanding deductions, consulting professionals, and planning ahead can make a world of difference.
Exactly. And remember, it's never too late to learn and adjust.
Thanks for that, Alex. I think our listeners will find this super helpful.
I hope so.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. All right, Alex, so now that we've covered the basics of side hustle taxes, let's dive into some immediate steps our listeners can take, right?
Absolutely, Jordan. I think the first thing folks should do is, well, get organized.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, what does that look like?
So I'd recommend starting with a simple checklist. You know, write down all your income sources, including your side hustle, and then keep track of your expenses too.
Right, because those expenses can really add up, can't they?
Exactly. And keeping that documentation is key. It's like having a roadmap for your finances.
So should they use any specific tools for that?
Definitely. There are great apps out there. One I really like is QuickBooks Self-Employed. It helps track income, expenses, and even mileage for those who drive for their hustle.
Oh, nice. I've heard good things about that one. What about something simpler for beginners?
Yeah, for someone just starting out, using a spreadsheet can work too. Just set up columns for income and expenses, and keep updating it regularly.
That sounds easy enough. And what about receipts?
Great question. You can use apps like Expensify, or even just take pictures with your phone and save them in a dedicated folder.
That's a smart way to keep everything in one place.
Exactly, and it saves time during tax season too, which is always a plus.
So let's talk about building good habits. What are some habits that can help our listeners manage their side hustle finances better?
Well, I think setting aside a portion of each payment you receive for taxes is crucial. I often suggest 20 to 30%.
Right, that way they won't be caught off guard later, huh?
Exactly. And it's also smart to review your finances regularly, maybe once a month. Just take a look at your income and expenses and adjust as necessary.
Sounds like a good routine to get into.
It really is. And for those who might be feeling overwhelmed, I'd say start small.
What do you mean by that?
Well, instead of diving into complicated tax strategies, just focus on the basics first, like keeping track of your income and expenses and filing your taxes accurately.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel pressure to know everything right away, but that's just not realistic, right?
Exactly. It's a learning process. And as you gain confidence, you can tackle more complex aspects of your side hustle finances.
So what about resources? Any books or websites that could help?
Sure. The Side Hustle Guide by Nick Loper is a great start. It covers everything from starting a side hustle to managing taxes.
Oh, I love that. And what about online resources?
The IRS website has a lot of useful information, specifically for freelancers and side hustlers.
That's a good point. It's important to go straight to the source when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, and there are also forums and communities online where people share their experiences. Places like Reddit can be quite helpful.
Right, connecting with others in the same boat can provide support and insights.
Exactly. And don't forget about local meetups or workshops. Sometimes just talking to someone who's been through it can make a huge difference.
That's a great idea.
And if you ever feel stuck, consider reaching out to a tax professional, even just for a one-time consultation to get you on the right track.
Yeah, I think that's a smart move, especially if you're just starting out.
Definitely. And remember, it's all about taking those small, manageable steps.
And building confidence as you go, right?
Exactly. And as you keep learning, you'll find it becomes easier to navigate the financial side of your side hustle.
So, to wrap it up, let's encourage our listeners to take action today.
For sure. Start by organizing your finances, set aside some money for taxes, and create good habits.
And don't forget to utilize those tools and resources we mentioned.
Right. Just take it one step at a time, and soon enough, you'll feel more in control of your side hustle finances.
Absolutely. Thanks for the practical advice today, Alex.
Anytime, Jordan.
And to our listeners, remember, you've got this. Take those small steps, and you'll see progress.
Looking forward to seeing everyone's side hustles thrive.
All right, let's transition to our outro. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Wow, Alex, that was a really insightful deep dive into side hustle taxes. I mean, it's something a lot of folks don't think about until it's too late, right?
Absolutely, Jordan. And, I think the key takeaways are really important. First off, keeping track of your income and expenses is essential. It can save you a ton of headaches come tax season.
Right, and then there's the whole idea of understanding what qualifies as a deductible expense. I mean, that can really make a difference in how much you owe, huh?
Exactly. And don't forget about estimated taxes. If you're earning a decent amount from that side hustle, paying quarterly can help you avoid surprises later.
Yeah, and also knowing the difference between a hobby and a business, that's a big one. It totally affects how you're taxed.
For sure. And lastly, it's just so crucial to consult with a tax professional if you're unsure. They can guide you through the nuances, which can be really helpful.
Yeah, I think those points really highlight the importance of being proactive with your finances. It's all about setting yourself up for success, especially as we get older.
Definitely. And just remember, it's never too late to start taking control of your financial future.
Absolutely. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. And hey, share this with someone over 40 who could use this info.
And don't forget, next time we'll be diving into a really important topic. Protecting your money from scams. It's something everyone should be aware of.
That's right. We're looking forward to seeing you all next time. Until then, take care and keep making those smart financial choices.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe out there.